today's title is Sharing Your Impact and Communicating Data Effectively. And again, we are joined by Dr. Drew Reynolds, who facilitated the first two workshops. Again, I'm going to do a little housekeeping, and then I'll go ahead and pass it over to Drew. We always have to say this disclaimer. The Southeast PTTC is part of a network of centers across the United States, and this training is 100% supported by SAMHSA of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The contents are those of the author and do not necessarily represent the official views of nor an endorsement by SAMHSA, HHS, or the U.S. government. And housekeeping. Again, I briefly went over this. We are part of a network of centers across the United States. We are the Southeast. We have 8 states in that limeish green color, and we are in Region 4. We are located in Winston-Salem and housed at Wake Forest School of Medicine, and we are led by co-directors Drs. Wagner and Wolfson. All right, so the real housekeeping. The most asked question is, will I get a certificate? Yes, you will get a certificate after you complete one really easy task, and that is to complete our evaluation form. And it's really quick and easy, so please take the time. We really value your feedback. And again, you're in an evaluation webinar, so hopefully you also value the importance of evaluating what you're doing and what we're doing. So again, please fill out that evaluation form, pause, and as soon as you're done filling that out, an external site will come up and that should be your certificate. If you have any issues, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at the Southeast PTTC, and I'll make sure you have my email in the chat. And again, we'll go over this at the end of the webinar. And the recording will be available in a couple days. I typically send out the post-webinar email within 48 hours, sometimes earlier, sometimes a little later, depending on the week. This one should probably go out within 24 hours. So you'll have an opportunity to see that evaluation link in there as well, as long as we have your correct email, and then you'll also get the link for the YouTube where it will be housed, this webinar. Okay, if you're not already following us, here's a quick snapshot of where our QR code is so you can follow us. And if you're not getting our newsletters, please do so. And again, we are so thrilled and honored to be able to introduce Dr. Drew Reynolds, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you, Drew. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely, Amber. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be with you all here today, and for our presentation, we are going to be talking about sharing your impact and communicating effectively. So the last 2 workshops that we had focused on an introduction to program evaluation with a focus on quantitative aspects of program evaluation, and we then talked a little bit about interviews and focus groups, qualitative information, testimonials in the second workshop. And now in our third workshop in this series, we're talking about communicating that data and effectively. And a lot of times, we get kind of stuck sometimes, where we have our data, but it just is sitting somewhere and unusable. And that's what we want to try to avoid. And so today's a shorter 1-hour workshop is going to focus on how to do that communication. Again, my name is Drew Reynolds, and I do evaluation work as a profession. I've been principal consultant at Common Good Data now since 2018, and served lots of organizations in prevention, in mental health, human services types areas. But I have a special heart for prevention because I got a lot of folks that I've worked with there. And also teach part-time in the School of Social Work at Georgia State. So it's wonderful to be with all of you. If you're interested in more topics that are on data evaluation, nonprofit topics in general, check out the Common Good Data podcast, and I've got a lot of resources there that you can check out as well. Now, for the last 2 workshops, we did have a toolkit available, and I've dropped this in the chat, or these links in the chat just so you can see them. I'll do it one more time just so it's easier to click. But we have a data evaluation made simple, and then interviews, focus groups, and testimonials, toolkits. They're really useful just to kind of read through, get a summary of the information you would need to know to be able to do some of this work on your own. So I recommend checking out those toolkits. And we do not have one that you have to download for today, but I will mention a really great resource towards the end of this presentation that I think will be helpful for those of you who are wishing to brush up on your Excel and analysis skills. So know that that is coming towards the end. Now, you've already shared your name and state and organization. It's been awesome to see. I think today I saw we have someone both from the Florida Keys and from Washington State. So it is true that we are coming from all corners of the country here for this presentation. So thank you all for being so generous with your time and coming to learn more about this topic. And I hope that what you find in here is useful for you as you communicate the impact of your work. So the goal for today is that we're going to identify some diverse audiences that you need to know, that need to know your impact and know how to do that differently. We'll also talk a little bit about communicating and reporting your impact in different formats you can do that in. I think that's going to be kind of the big focus for today is what are the many different ways that you can talk about data that go beyond just a simple report that you send to a funder. We also are going to talk a little bit about a process for building a data collection engine, kind of as I call it. And I think that when we build out this type of data collection and reporting engine, you're going to find that it really starts to become a bit of a flywheel in your organization, where you're able to do great work, you're able to demonstrate that impact. When you demonstrate that impact, it secures more funding that allows you to do more work. And that cycle continues on, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like today. All right. So let's start with audience. Let's start with our audience. Can you describe maybe one audience that you would need to communicate data, impact, information to, and what they care most about? To answer this question, try and drop it right on over there into the chat. What is an audience that you need to communicate data to, and what do they care most about? And for this, you can come up with all different kinds of diverse ideas and approaches. Let's see what we got. Tiffany shares funders, absolutely, right? Lots of, especially for those of you who are grantees of state and federal grants, you got to get back to those. But most funders are going to always want to see something in your, and you oftentimes require that you share that data. Funder stakeholders, excellent. Community partners, my coalition, very good. Actually, I'm glad that Jacqueline, you mentioned my coalition, because a lot of times, when you're doing coalition work, sometimes you're putting together a meeting and you're trying to think, hey, what can we bring? What can we talk about? I think that bringing some type of data or information about your organization, whether it's data from the community, secondary data sources, or data that you've collected yourself, is a great conversation starter to a coalition meeting. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. State and county officials, excellent. Taxpayers, absolutely. A lot of you are funded by the public, and the public should know what you're doing. And we have to take that responsibility to share and be transparent about the work that we're doing as much as we can. The more that we communicate the work that we do to the public, I also believe the more likely that the public is going to reward you with further funds and support for the work that you do. So taking that responsibility very seriously is a good one. Parents and families and youth coalition members, absolutely, right? If for parents and youth to be involved, they want to know the impact that you're having. What are they likely going to be able to participate in? What cool mission are you doing? What fun activities are you doing? What change can they expect in their lives as a result of interacting with you? Great points here. Students, parents, donors, agency leadership, excellent. Tribal council, a great one, So a lot of times we think more kind of formal U.S. tradition, but we have lots of different, municipal entities out there, like tribal councils in particular, that would be important to report back to. Organization staff, government officials, excellent. So great examples here. And I want you to be thinking about all these different resources, right? School youth, we have youth on here. We've got tribal council on here. We've got stakeholders. We've got donors and funders. We've got coalition members. All of them come with different knowledge about data, different knowledge about prevention, different reading abilities, different languages often. And so when you're presenting all this information, what my biggest hope as a takeaway is from all of this is that you kind of come away with new ideas to think about how you can communicate through a ton of different formats and a ton of different channels so you can adequately reach all of these different audiences. All right. So here's kind of a list that I put together, which more or less maps, I think, what was dropped into the chat. A few things on here. Actually, I think just about all of them were covered. Maybe, a United Way and Community Foundation are on there too, but you probably would have seen those. Your own staff, I think, is actually important. We don't always think about that because we think, oh, our staff knows exactly what we're doing. But I have been working with so many different organizations where maybe it's a prevention team and you've got also a treatment team on the same organization. And the treatment and prevention folks have no idea what each other are doing and couldn't speak, beyond sort of a surface level about, what the other side of the other arm of the organization is working on. So reporting just to your own people, it can be really important. Business community, law enforcement, all these different types of audiences can be so important to reach out to. The key here, again, as I kind of alluded to before, is that you want to tailor the message of impact that you share with each of these different audiences, because they all are looking for different things from you. And so whenever you're thinking about how do I share and report on my data, sometimes our first question is how do I get this graph to look good? Or I got to dive into Excel and figure something out, or I got to put together this report in this format. And we get so caught up in the details that we forget to think a little bit more about what that audience is and what they're looking for. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of these formats and approaches that you can take. What are some different strategies you can use to communicate the impact of your work? Well, I'm going to suggest 8 of them today, and we'll kind of walk through each one by one to kind of talk about what it is, what you would use it for, and how it kind of might be integrated into your work. Now, one thing that I will emphasize on this slide here with these 8 different formats that I have is that on here, the only one that might correlate to a report back to a state or federal grantee or grant maker would be the annual report or monthly and quarterly reports. Those are the only 2. The rest of these are really designed for people who are not directly funding you. And I emphasize that because a lot of times we get focused on how do we get things back to the funders so that we can continue to receive the funds and continue the work. And I want to kind of push our conversation today to be thinking, how can we talk about impact beyond just the funder, or at least beyond just your current funder? Because these other 6 out here are going to be strategies that you can use to raise the profile of your organization, to communicate the impact of your work, and ultimately start to diversify and seek new sources of funding, particularly in an environment where funding expectations are changing a lot. So I think that that's something that we want to be thinking a lot about. All right, so as those of you who have attended some of the first 2 workshops, I love to have some interaction in here. So we've got a fun little poll here to see a little bit about kind of where you guys are coming from, what types of reporting strategies you currently use or communication strategies you currently use to talk about the impact of your organization and your work. To be able to participate in this poll, you can grab your phone and just QR code the QR code there on the screen, or you can go to slido.com, enter in that number and passcode, and you can participate in the poll. The poll asks, which of the following approaches do you use for communicating impact? And we've got all of those 8 on there. Actually, I think I might have divided a few of them out a little bit here too, so there might be a little bit more. To just get a sense of what people are doing on a regular basis, which will be, I think, helpful for some of you to think about, hey, what am I doing and what are my colleagues in the field doing, so that you can kind of get a sense of where your organization is sitting and maybe where you might want to push yourself a little bit more. I can see up on the top right, we got 31 responses in. I'm going to give it a few more. The one danger of showing the poll results is that people change their answers once they see the poll results coming on in. All right, 43, I think that's enough. Let's see what we got. Okay, so we've got a lot of folks doing monthly and quarterly reports. That's your biggest one. And that makes sense because many grantees will typically require some type of monthly or quarterly reporting as a part and sort of the part of the contract of your grant, right? And so that makes sense that that's at the top. Annual report is up there too. Social media posts, excellent. Infographics up there, data dashboards. And then it gets a little bit lower and lower as we get into the leave behinds, professional videos, earned media, PR, etc. Okay, this is really cool to see and gives me a good sense too about what experience you all have had and how maybe I can kind of talk a little bit about some of these other ones that are less commonly used and how they might be useful in your work. Lots of great responses here though, fantastic. All right, let's continue on with our presentation. Thank you all so much. Let's talk a little bit about the annual report, kind of what it is and what you might use it for. So annual reports are designed in most cases to be a big kind of summative document that articulates all of the great things that an organization is doing, and then communicates that on an annual basis to its entire audience. Annual reports are comprehensive insofar as that they are trying to provide a summary of all of the different activities that you're engaging in. So annual reports are not necessarily going to focus on just one aspect or one piece, but really you're trying to talk about an organization or a project on a whole. It's designed for a general audience so that anybody could come and access it and take a look at it. And the goal with an annual report is detail, where you're really kind of going through and adding what are your biggest goals, your biggest performance indicators, sometimes use that term, key performance indicators. What are those for your organization? Have you met them, and what data do you have and evidence do you have to support that you've been working towards those goals? I think that too, what is important in an annual impact report is to have a great combination of things that are quantitative and data and statistics, graphs, charts, things like that, as well as qualitative, where you have testimonial responses from people who have received information, or sorry, who have participated in your programs, where you have maybe responses from qualitative focus groups or interviews, as we talked about in prior presentations. And a big one, and a huge big one, is pictures. There should be beautiful, awesome pictures in here of the work that you are doing so that you can share all that work and what it looks like to be a part of and participating in your mission with your community. So that's a key, those are kind of the key things you want to have in an annual report. I recommend that every organization who does any work like this have at least an annual report. There are two reasons for that. One is that you have some type of comprehensive document that you can always refer back to that shares everything that you're doing. And as you probably have had the experience, I know with a lot of the folks that I've worked with, I've had the experience, whatever reports you're preparing for a grant, a person who's giving you a grant, those reports are typically not really well designed for the public. They're kind of, filling out forms on a website or something like that. You're answering questions, you're filling in charts and things like that. It's not really designed for the public. The annual report is really designed for anyone to just go to your website, see what you do. And so I recommend it for that purpose. So you can have one document that you can reference to everyone about the work that you do on an annual basis. The second reason that I recommend doing an annual report is that the annual report then becomes the source that your entire organization can use when they need data for something. So when they need to apply for a grant, your executive director is walking into a board meeting, one of your coalition members is reaching out to a public official to set up a meeting, your volunteers are reaching out to parents and youth to try to engage a new audience in a particular new initiative. You can always have at the bottom of an email, check out our annual report right here so you can learn more about the work that we do. And if you need to grab data for different purposes, like writing a problem statement or something like that on a grant, you already have that document already put together. It's got your mission, it's got your vision and values, it's got all your KPIs, it's got the key indicators, it's got the key data points, so that anybody in your organization can then reference that when they're applying for a grant or they're trying to engage in some type of activity. So for those two reasons, one, so that the public can see it, and two, so the organization has all the data in a comprehensive way that it can use and divide up and put out in different places to be able to communicate the impact of your work. All right, so that's the annual report. I'll mention too, I will be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have questions about any of these as they come up, please don't hesitate to just drop that into the chat and I'll go ahead and answer them as they come on in. A few more things on the annual report is that I recommend in terms of length, somewhere between 5 and 30 plus pages. And that's just going to depend on the size of your organization and the scope of your work. If you're a small coalition that just got started, somewhere around 5 pages might be sufficient. But if you're a large organization that has maybe 10 plus grant streams doing a bunch of different initiatives, you're probably looking at 25, 30 page length in terms of being able to be comprehensive about your work. I also do recommend including an executive summary, something that somebody can quickly skim through to get a sense of what the key highlights are. And even though it should have some pictures and images and be well presented visually, you don't necessarily have to have a graphic designer or use a fancy graphic designing tool to be able to design one of these. I think you can, I do most of mine in Microsoft Word. You could certainly do it in Canva, and you can really make them beautiful even using the tools that you already know. So I say that because I want you to feel like you can actually do these things, but to be able to do them in a way that is using tools that you already know how to use. Okay, so that's the annual reports. Now we have our monthly report as well. And many of you indicated that you're doing something like this, a monthly or quarterly report. And for most of you, it's probably because you're doing something like that to report back to some type of funder, a county, a state, federal governments, grant, things like that. And the key here for your monthly and quarterly reports, most of the time, those are not public facing. They can be if you want to make them look awesome. But the idea here is you want to be able to report on your most important indicators, KPIs and things like that, to the people who have to know them on a regular basis. And that can be an immediate like funder or grant maker. A lot of times it's actually to your own staff to say, okay, how many people did we serve in January and February? What should we be planning for March and April? Kind of thinking about it like that. A lot of times you'll see on grant proposals, especially in the evaluation section, they say, how are you going to use, what kind of approach are you going to use to ensure continuous improvement or quality improvement, things like that. And it's really in these monthly and quarterly reports where you're starting to build the sort of data muscles of your organization to be able to get used to the idea of regularly looking at data that reflects your work, and then to use that to drive conversation and improvement in your organization. Hey, maybe you're doing a satisfaction survey for a service that you provide all the time, and all of a sudden, you used to be getting 4.5, 5 stars and everything, and now it's getting a lot lower. Well, why is that? And how you can kind of get back to address that. Maybe you are looking at things like medication drop-offs, right, or medication collection, and you saw that you had you've been doing it every month, but all of a sudden you had a huge spike in one month and not another. Well, maybe you can go back and use the data to say, hey, why was that the case? Why was it so successful? Or why did we collect so much more that month versus another month? And that's really what these monthly and quarterly reports are designed to do, is to get information back to funders and then have that information and data at your fingertips so that you can make good decisions. So we have a couple of questions into the chat here. What is a call out? I think I'm trying to remember what the context was in which I said that. It may be, I'm referring to, sometimes in reporting, you kind of think of something that you're drawing someone's attention to. So a call out would be, hey, pay attention to this, this number. You might make it bolder or bigger, or change the font or something like that to say, hey, this is something important to look at. And then Vivian shares, what does KP stand for? So KPIs, those stand for key performance indicators. It's a term that's been kind of adopted from the business world into kind of the nonprofit sector, nonprofit and organizational management sector. But the way they kind of think about KPIs are just like, what are the most important indicators? Every organization should have 3 or 5, maybe more, that you can use to be able to kind of speak about the work that you do. A very common one would be just the number of people you served on a regular basis, but it doesn't have to be that. And you might even adjust that term to say key outcome indicators if you want to go away from just things you do, outputs like number of people you serve and whatnot, to outcomes like changes in behavior, things along those lines. All right. So next we have, I'm so sorry, we have dashboards. And so dashboards are a great way for you to be able to dynamically report on data. And when I say dynamically, what I mean by that is that you're able to report on data as it's coming in on a regular timed basis. So in evaluation, sometimes it's like, okay, there's a beginning and end, you pause, then you collect the data, and then you report. But the challenge is that you're always doing work. And so what you want to be able to do is try to look at the most up-to-date data. What happened last month, and how does that compare to the month before? What happened last quarter, and how does that compare to the last quarter or the quarter of the year prior? And so dashboards are designed to be able to constantly update as you add more data to them. And then when you're able to see them, it kind of gives you a sense of where your organization is, and then in turn helps to inform decision making. So that's really kind of the key piece to it. So if you imagine, for example, hey, in this quarter we had a lot of activity, this quarter we didn't. Why might that be the case? What should we change? Hey, these are the different counties that we're serving right now. It seems like we should put more emphasis in this county than that county, since we've been doing a lot in this county for the last couple of weeks or months, right? Gives you a sense too on like, hey, what's the population that we're serving and how you might want to change that a little bit. So I think that the dashboards are used to be able to have that kind of dynamic, in the moment, real time data that allow you to hopefully be able to drive a conversation around what you want to accomplish in your organization. I recommend that you bring a copy or have some type of copy of a dashboard at every major meeting that you have. If you're a coalition that meets on a once-a-month basis, you should have some type of dashboard that you bring to that conversation that all coalition members can view and use to drive questions and dialogue around the impact of your work. It's really great for staff to be able to see too, so they can see the work that they're doing and spending so much hard work doing, being able to communicate and share that on a regular basis. We got a great question in the chat. What program or software do you use for dashboards? Any recommendations? Catherine responds actually too with a great one, which is we use Power BI, which is part of the Microsoft suite. Absolutely, you can use Power BI. It's a fantastic tool. Another one that's very common is Tableau. Tableau might be a bit cost prohibitive for some, but it's a really fantastic tool for those of you who like to use it. Power BI is kind of nice because it's a good kind of analog to that. So those are both two good options. This dashboard that I have here, I created for a client that I was working with entirely in Microsoft Word. So if learning a new tool or trying something different seems difficult, you can actually do a lot of dashboarding work, even just within Microsoft Excel. The nice thing about Power BI and Tableau is sometimes it's a little easier for them to be shared on the web. So if you have like a website where you want to share that or send somebody a link to, rather than having kind of like access to a file somewhere, I think that's one of the huge advantages of those two tools. There are others out there, but I think that Excel, Power BI, and Tableau are the ones that I see most often used. I think too, there's a couple of other programs that do project management type work. I think like Notion and Monday.com, for example, have dashboarding kind of capabilities as well. And there are certainly other tools. All right. You'll also probably be familiar with dashboards that are secondary data. So this is data that's already been collected by somebody else. So I shared you an example of a dashboard that is like data of work that you've done within your own organization. And you also have access probably to dashboards of secondary data, which is data typically collected by government agencies that are then made available to the public. So for example, at the county level, you might have medical examiner or coroner data that looks at things like number of deaths due to drug overdose. You might have information from a healthcare system on ER visits, so emergency room visits that are related to a particular substance. You might have auto vehicle accidents that you can look up at your state's Department of Transportation. Certainly there's national data sets like the YRBS and others too that you could probably make very good use of. And I encourage you to kind of get a good sense of what some of those dashboards are, which ones have data that are local to your community, or at least at the state level, that you could use to help inform some of your work. I think they're great conversation starters and use them all the time in presentations. You know, when we're doing needs assessments or we're trying to gather our coalition members together and they want to say, hey, what's the state of this problem? You know, I'm a coalition member, but I'm in the business sector and I don't do prevention work every day. Like, how severe is our challenges around vaping or marijuana use, and help inform me about that. These secondary data sets can be extremely informative and help kind of situate people and position them into a place where they feel confident to participate in the conversation and make suggestions. So another thing you can do with the secondary data, if you have a ton of time in your hands, is actually compile them all and kind of create some of your own dashboards for maybe the particular area or a set of counties that you serve, which can be useful to be able to kind of have everything in one place for your audience. All right, infographics. So lots of folks will also use infographics. And I really think that infographics are useful to bring data to raise awareness. oftentimes sharing statistics or data about a particular topic, and then getting that information out in a visually appealing way for people to engage with and use to start a conversation. A classic way to use infographics is as a part of a prevention communications campaign. If you want to talk about, for example, the health effects or consequences of smoking, you want to talk a little bit about the potential risks that might be associated with youth alcohol use. Certainly, there's a lot out there about the risks of nicotine vapes and opioid use and others. And so infographics are kind of ways to compile research and data and information to help inform the public on a particular topic. You can still use infographics to talk about your own work. I think it can be great when you're doing, for example, a Giving Tuesday campaign, and you want to have a couple of social posts that just say, hey, what have you accomplished in the past year, and what will you be able to accomplish if someone supports you in a Giving Tuesday campaign? Infographics can be very, very useful. But again, I think one of the classic cases that they could be used for is in raising awareness. And so seeing data not just as something that you're doing to evaluate your own work, but also as something that you're giving the public to raise awareness around a particular topic or area of concern. Let's talk about leave behinds. So this is one that kind of comes more from the community organizing and policy arenas, where you are in a situation as an organization, as a coalition, and you need to meet with an elected official to raise awareness about a particular area of concern in the community and how you might be asking them to then assist you in addressing that problem. So 1 to 2 page leave behinds can be really, really helpful to be able to walk into a meeting with a county commissioner, with a state representative, to sit down with them. Oftentimes you only have 5 minutes, or maybe you're talking to a staffer. And then after you've made your elevator pitch, maybe you have a 1 or 2 key asks for a bill of legislation you're asking for them to support, or maybe asking for additional funding related to a particular stream that they're associated with, something along those lines. And then you're going to leave them with something. So that way they have something that they can take with them to inform them on the issue or topic, and also to remember you by, so that they know, like, hey, what is your organization? Who are you about? And have that awareness. A lot of times, I've worked with organizations that have met with elected officials, and sometimes you're kind of concerned, like, oh, I'm not sure how this conversation is going to go. Are they going to remember who I am? Is it really going to lead to the policy change? And it may not necessarily lead to the exact policy change that you're asking about, but with that person now being aware of who you are, all of a sudden, maybe 2 months later, you're invited into a conversation that elected official was already planning to have with the community, but also knows and sees you as an important stakeholder and as an important voice representing youth or parents or something like that in the community. So I always think it's great to have some type of 1 or 2 page document that summarizes who you are, what you do, what your key impact is, and then always including some type of call to action. I should have included that as a bullet on the slide. A call to action where you're asking somebody to be involved in some way. Support, for example, a tobacco ordinance in your community so that you can reduce access to tobacco in public spaces. Something along those lines would be a really great thing to be thinking about as an organization, particularly as your organization maybe steps into, maybe you're really into it, maybe you're just dipping your toe into advocacy and policy work. Okay. Also, too, it doesn't have to be just a government official or an elected official. A lot of times, even just meeting with a board member, or if you're working with a funder, this can be particularly true for community foundations or other local foundations that meet with dozens of nonprofits who may be seeking assistance in some form. That to have that one leave behind that's well put together and has very clear indications of your impact, key performance indicators and whatnot, can sometimes shift your organization to the top of the pile, so to speak, and increase the credibility of your organization and work. We had some great questions in the chat about infographics and tools that you can use. Canva has gotten a lot of love in the chat, which is awesome. I love using Canva as well. It's a fantastic tool. Venngage, interesting, cool. Adobe Express, I haven't used Venngage as much, but both of those are really great. So I think Pictochart is another one that I've heard of before. There's tons of them that you can use, but finding kind of a tool out there that can be helpful for putting those together can be really, really great. All right. So speaking of infographics and where you might want to put them, social media is a good place to put some things like that, right? One thing I'll share about social media, you might not necessarily have thought coming into this presentation, hey, when I'm putting together a report back to the federal government for this grant that I'm on, we do on every quarterly basis, to be also thinking, hey, this is a great chance to also share something on social media about what we just accomplished. And I think social media is a really fantastic tool to be able to communicate more about who your organization is and bring about two, I think, big things, brand awareness being one of them. So awareness of who your organization is and what you do, what you represent, what your values are, and then thought leadership, so that individuals within that organization begin to be seen as experts, local experts on a particular topic. So if you're out there on social media talking about youth vaping use on a regular basis, and you're sharing useful information, you've got infographics, you're taking pictures at events that you've been at and sharing them on social media, and maybe you show a couple of impact reports or things like that on social media, you very quickly become seen as an expert in your community on that topic. And then all of a sudden, it leads to other opportunities for your organization to come speak at an event, come participate in this community roundtable. Hey, we need somebody to table at this particular event. We're looking for youth to be able to participate in this one thing. When people see you as that leader out there in the field doing this work on social media, it then opens up doors of opportunity for your organization when you do it consistently. I think it's great too as a way to leave a professional impression for your organization, and also as an opportunity for storytelling. And we talked about this a little bit in the last workshop about the importance of storytelling in your work. But because social media is a format that allows you to be a little bit more dynamic, allows you to engage with the audience, where people are posting and replying back to you and sharing, it's a really, really great tool for storytelling. Even short things, 30 seconds of what it's like to be in your office, or a 30-second clip of something you were doing with your team that day can be a great way to talk about and share a little bit about your organization. I also really love voiceover videos. This is another way you can talk about and communicate your impact. So imagine, when I do consulting work with organizations and we create annual reports on an annual basis, I also try to create a voiceover video of 1 or 2 minutes that just summarizes the annual report. Because not everybody's going to be able to read through 30 pages of a report, and they might not even be all that excited about clicking on a PDF. But if you've got a voiceover video that you can send out in an email, post to social media, place on your website when people are coming through, and it's very easy to put together, and it's just a great way for people to get a quick view of who your organization is and what the impact looks like. I recommend keeping them 1 to 2 minutes max, definitely not more from that. In our attention-driven society right now, it's hard to go beyond 1 to 2 minutes. And photos and videos, if you have it, a comment on that too is that the photos and videos do not have to be these beautiful, curated, professional videos and photos. It's awesome if you have those, but don't let that keep you from doing something like this. Like, you can do it just by taking pictures on your cell phone. Certainly that you'd want to have agreements in place to be able to share those videos and photos, but that's a great way to be able to add some context to what you're trying to present, to make it visually appealing, to allow people to enter in and share in that mission with you. Certainly, we talked about Canvas. You can use Canva, PowerPoint, or others. I love using Canva for these because they have a great way of kind of creating slides and video. You can record your own voice over the top of it, or if you don't even want to do voice, you can just do some background music. It's a great way to do your voiceover videos. And fantastic for social and sharing at and before meetings. A great thing you can do, if you have an annual board meeting where you're going to do some strategic planning work, or you're going to be thinking about planning for the future with your board, this is a great thing to send them in advance. Send it to them right before they come, or just right as they walk on in, the first 2 minutes, say, hey, let's check out what we accomplished in this past year. 2-minute video to get people excited and learning more about your work, and then getting ready to plan for the next year. So check out voiceover videos. They're a great way to share that impact. Another is professional video. So this is where you would bring in someone like a professional photographer or videographer to be able to put together something that's kind of a bit more professional. And I recommend this for those of you who do a lot of fundraising, particularly peer-to-peer fundraising, or kind of fundraising from individual donors, and do events, things like annual galas and others, and other fundraising events. It's a great way to raise awareness about your organization. Fantastic for stories and testimonials of impact. When you can have someone work with a videographer to talk about the impact of your organization on their lives, and then to use that video and share it at a gala, share it for a Giving Tuesday campaign, any of those kind of key big fundraising activities, it can be a really great tool for using that. One thing I'll recommend too is to consider banking videos rather than just doing one-off productions. So sometimes you might say like, hey, we got our annual gala coming up, we need to do a video. And you're kind of thinking, oh no, now I got to figure out, I get a videographer and then we got to set up the time to record with people. But if you have an ongoing relationship with a good videographer who can come in on a quarterly basis to meet with some of your team members or meet with folks that you have served, and then just have those testimonials that you can then compile into different formats, like a video for X, Y, or Z type of event or opportunity, it can be a really great way to kind of move beyond just that single event and make the planning process a little bit easier as well. We also have opportunities for media and earned video, and particularly around public relations work. This is great for things like, as I mentioned before, annual galas, fundraising opportunities and events, and telling stories, sharing testimonials and impact and whatnot. I think the key thing around PR firms that can be really helpful is that they can actually, PR firms that do the work really well and have good local connections can actually get you spots on local news, on local radio, on podcasts, on other types of media channels, so that your information about who you are is really getting out into the community. Sometimes we get stuck sometimes and we're like, man, I feel like I'm talking to the same people. We keep interacting with the same people. We need to broaden our reach a little bit. And a way you can do that is through engaging in media sources and having a PR firm to work with you to put together a strategy to be able to communicate the impact of your work through these other channels. Another one of these, I don't have it listed on here, but writing op-eds is another good example of that, or engaging with your local newspaper to have them cover an event that you're doing, or to interview you or something like that, or to do kind of a profile on a particular topic is another thing that a PR firm can help you with. Although I would say for op-eds, you don't even necessarily have to work with a PR firm. If you find a local newspaper, you can typically write one yourself and send it to them. You'd be surprised that you might actually find yourself in the newspaper. All right, last one I'll mention here is podcasting. Podcasting is becoming an increasingly used tool for folks to communicate and talk about topics of their interests. There's lots of podcasts that you can go on to, including ones that focus just on prevention. Sometimes there's one that are in your community or that are focused on local issues that can be really great to be on. You can certainly launch a show of your own if you want to, though that requires a little bit more legwork probably. But even if you find that there's maybe there's a podcast in your community that's local to you that would be interesting and maybe reaches an audience that you're interested in reaching out to, it could be a great way to communicate some of the impact of your work. And what's nice about podcasts is, especially for some of the more local and homegrown podcasts, is that while their reach might not be the same as being on like NPR or something like that, or on the national news, it does provide kind of a low stakes way for you to try out media work. So if you're scared about being on local news, and maybe that might be a little bit difficult, start with podcasting and reach out to podcasts that serve an audience that you are trying to reach, and then to reach out to the host and see if they might have you on the show to talk a little bit about your work. All right, so based on what we shared today, which format are you not currently using but would plan to explore after today's workshops? After all those things that I just kind of walked through and explained, what do you think you would like to try and work on? So go ahead and pull out your cell phone and click on that QR code again, or go to slido.com to respond to this poll, because I would love to see, based on what we've talked about so far, the great engagement we've had in the chat, what do you think is most interesting? What do you think you would want to try and use as a prevention or a broad human services organization based on what we've talked about? Got some responses coming in here, 14 or so. I'm looking into the chat too. We've got some great conversations and more information added in here. We have Notebook lm.google.com is a great site that you can upload a PowerPoint or PDF and it converts it to a podcast using AI. Oh, wow. Interesting. That's a pretty cool resource. I think I've never tried that before, but great. And thanks for sharing that, Jeannie. That's awesome. All right. Oh, wow. And you can pick your own voices on the podcast. That's interesting. See, if you're like, I don't know if I want to type out my podcast, but I just want to be able to participate in some way and get some text on there, and maybe you can choose an AI voice to do it for you. All right, let's see how folks are responding based on what we've shared today. What do they want to try out? All right, dashboards and voiceover videos are getting some love. That's awesome. 1 to 2 page leave behind is up there as well as infographics and whatnot. Fantastic. This is great. So dashboards, I spelled dashboards wrong. I'm sorry. Dashboards is a great tool, and Tableau, Power BI, fantastic tools for that. This is actually a great segue because I want to share another resource that I have for you all that might be helpful as you're trying to put together some dashboards of your own. So I'll get to that right at the end here, though. Let's see here. We've got 13 minutes. All right, moving along. So what should you choose to use? I would say that everybody, I kind of put this in like your essential, advanced, and pro package, right? Like what should you choose from? We've all tried to, buy some software online, probably is divided up in something like this. I do think it's a good idea for everybody to be doing at least an annual report, probably a 1 to 2 page voiceover video, because those are not too hard to put together, and social media presence of some kind. That's it. Those are kind of essential things that I think you should do. We also have in your advanced, so if you're starting to say like, hey, I want to level up a little bit, consider doing things like dashboards and podcasts and infographics. Maybe if you're doing some advocacy work and you want to be engaging with your local elected officials or just other decision makers, definitely some leave behinds. A 1 to 2 page leave behind that you can just take anywhere you go. Take it when you're tabling at an event. Can be really helpful. And then maybe looking at professional video. Although I think that actually should be over in the pro section, as I'm realizing I have it in 2 places. Pro would be your earned media, PR, hiring a designer for your annual reports, a graphic designer or PR firm. That's if you're kind of a big organization trying to really level up and do some amazing work. So that's kind of how I would recommend it. You might amend this layout that I have here based on your own needs, but just kind of thoughts or recommendations. Now let's talk a little bit about organizing your data for reporting. So how are you actually going to do this if you got all these different formats? I've got another poll here. I'm actually going to skip it because I think we're running a little bit low on time. Yeah, we're going to move on forward here. Let's see here. And I want to get to how, what I was referring to earlier as a data engine. And this is kind of a way to think about how you're gathering and collecting and storing and then presenting on your data on a regular, ongoing basis. So you see we've got kind of the graphic here where it says data collection is where you're gathering information from surveys and focus groups, interviews, enrollment paperwork, photos, all that kind of stuff is happening. Your team is out in the field, you're collecting data. Then you enter that data. Uh-oh, there we go. Maybe you're using a tool like Microsoft Forms or Google Forms. Maybe you get another form, SurveyMonkey or one of the other tools out there. They're all great. Or maybe you have something that's more complex, something like a data or case management system. I saw somebody in the chat mention Monday.com, which could, for some purposes, work as a data entry tool for some types of data as well. A great tool. I love Monday. I use it myself. And so you're entering that data. Then it's going to be stored somewhere, maybe in Excel, maybe an Access database, maybe some type of case management system. Somewhere it's being stored, right? And then you got to get that data out of that storage and then present it. And you can use things like Excel or Google Sheets, Canva, Word, PowerPoint, Adobe, Power BI, Tableau, any of those great tools that we talked about today to be able to present it. Now, what I have here is, as you'll see, it's kind of like supposed to be like a big wheel or kind of like a big circle here. I'm not sure if it's quite as easy to see with all the arrows. But after you then present on that data, you then go back and you do that process again and again and again. And hopefully it's informing things like grant applications I have down here, but you could also add in fundraising opportunities and other ways in which the way you communicate your impact then drives additional opportunities for funding for your organization that then lead you to continue to expand and grow your programs, and you're out collecting data again to show that impact. And so I want you to be thinking as you leave this presentation how can the data collection work that you're doing be seen as ongoing and circular rather than linear? Not thinking as just before and end and then report and done, but rather ongoing as a regular part of your work on a regular basis. And that you're thinking about different ways that you can use that data that you've been collecting to share and demonstrate your impact, and share that in a variety of different formats to the broadest number of audiences. Now, for those of you who want to, we talked about an interest in dashboards. I have a page here that might be useful for you. If you go to commongooddata.com/excel-tutorial, I have 6 videos there that kind of show how you can just walk through Excel and do a very quick program evaluation. And I may need to get a 7th video up there that speaks specifically about doing dashboards in Excel. But if you Google how to do a dashboard in Excel, there's a number of great videos out there that you can choose from as well. And those videos will kind of walk through how to do a fantastic dashboard like the one that I shared with you earlier in this presentation using just Excel. And then a good opportunity too for those of you who want to level up a little bit and try something like Power BI or Tableau. They've got great training opportunities on both of those websites. Lots of people have done different trainings you can use as well. But if you're like, hey, that sounds like a lot, I want to start with just working on my Excel skills, I wanted to share this resource with you all as well, so that you can use it to just kind of you could go through each of these in probably about an hour or two. All 6 of them, sorry, in about an hour or two. And it might give you some ideas about how you might be able to better represent and share your data to be able to communicate your impact. So I hope that's useful for you all. Final tips as we wrap up here as we get close to 2 o'clock. First, use a diverse set of data sources. So we talked about in the first 2 workshops, using quantitative data like statistics and numbers, also using stories and testimonials, remembering that data is not just numbers, but that when you share a whole complete vision, that's the best way you can communicate your impact. Weaving a story between qualitative and quantitative data. I guess I have here percents without people misses the mark, right? People will often forget the percent, but they won't forget the story you tell. And so if you can kind of weave those 2 pieces together, because they're so important, it makes for a bigger impact. Use visuals to communicate your numeric data, graphs, charts, callouts, branded materials, all that kind of stuff is really important. I found a lot of time that the medium is often the message. I guess what I mean by that is that by presenting a professionally done report on your organization's data, even if somebody doesn't read through the whole thing, it communicates a lot about who you are, that you are on top, you know your topic well, you're an expert in your topic, and that you are seen as a leader in your community and being able to address that particular social challenge or problem. And lastly, to present your data in as many different ways to as many different audiences across as many different channels as you possibly can. And with that, I will wrap up. I'll pause for questions or comments or ideas. Drop them into the chat, or you can come off of mute as well. It's been wonderful to chat with you all over these past 3 workshops, so thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Drew. This was an excellent presentation. It's so important to be able to tell our story effectively and to use all the data that we collect. I know we all spend a lot of times working on reports, and to be able to conceptualize how we can use that rich data to be able to apply it to our work in different audiences is so important, instead of it just sitting in your folder on your computer. So thank you again. It was really easy to understand, a lot of great tools and resources that were communicated. Thanks for the participants for engaging and providing some of your ideas and experiences. I really loved being able to be here with you all and to wrap out a great webinar series.